3 years ago today, in the Ukrainian city of Odessa, a building where anti-Kiev activists were holed up inside was set on fire, killing 48 people. Despite lengthy investigations, relatives of the victims are still no closer to finding out who was actually responsible. RT's Maria Finoshina, who was in Odessa just after the tragedy, files the story.
It's been 3 years since tragedy struck the usually stress-free Black Sea port of Odessa in southern Ukraine. The relatives of those 48 people who died on May 2nd still don't know who's to blame for the death of their loved ones. Many separate investigations have been launched since then by Ukraine's General Prosecutor, the Interior Ministry, a parliamentary commission and police. The result? 21 people were charged with a very vague involvement in riots. There were 100 of court hearings, but no one was ever brought to justice. Both EU and UN slammed Ukrainian authorities for lack of progress and accountability, both equally unsuccessful in putting pressure on Kiev. So what we know for sure: there were at least 2 opposing groups rallying that day in the city. So-called anti-Maidan activists refusing to recognize the authorities in Kiev as legitimate and often referred to as pro-Russian forces, and those supporting Ukraine's new rules. And it turned violent. Six people were shot dead during marches, meaning those rallying were armed. But the worst was still ahead. The so-called pro-Maidan activists first burned down their tents. They were here in front of the building on this square, and then set on fire the trade union's headquarters that you can see behind me at the time when several people were inside. Eyewitnesses say they barricaded the entrance that you can see over there, preventing people from leaving, and started throwing Molotov cocktails through the windows. People inside started suffocating. This is where dozens of people died.
Several people jumped out of the windows in panic. On the ground, a loud crowd was attacking those who had been jumping from the windows. I saw 100 people running towards one person. They threw him to the ground and started to beat him to death.
There are so many videos showing different moments of the horror. There were so many independent investigations into who was behind the violence. They all came to different conclusions, but agreed on one thing: the authorities' efforts in finding the truth are far from satisfactory. And being one of the most visualized and accounted for tragedies, this terrible scene that unfolded in Odessa remains among the most mysterious in the Ukrainian conflict.
RT contacted a number of international organizations for their response to the investigations into the Odessa tragedy, but they've either declined to comment or said they've deferred the request. And political analyst John Bosnich believes those responsible would already be found, convicted and sentenced if there was any true motivation from Kiev's authorities or ultimately that of Brussels.
If there's a will to investigate an incident and to find the culprits, usually they can be found. If there's no real will to follow up, then there are many excuses that can be used for the failure. The point is that there were dozens of people killed in the incident in Odessa, and that those deaths need to be accounted for, and the persons responsible need to be found. There are plenty of witnesses. There is footage from the scene. There is no doubt that conclusions can be drawn. It's a question of will. Is the European Union interested in this matter? Probably not. Is the government in Kiev interested in this matter? Definitely not.
It is RT International. Thanks for joining us so far today. Angela Merkel in Sochi to meet with the Russian president. We go live to our correspondent in just a moment.